Hey, what's up, folks? This is Chris. Here I am on a trip here, visiting Oregon. I live in Northern California, if you didn't already know that. I'm on a work/friendship trip, and I know it's kind of waking up this morning, recognizing it's Thursday. I hadn't really had a show figured out for this week, so I decided to just come from my heart this week and do a walk and talk. And it's an interesting little mental battle that goes on in the content creation, where we have to ask ourselves, those of us who produce content, what do I know? I get pretty comfortable with my own mind and grasp on things, and it all seems like it makes a lot of sense. But you never know what other people know or don't know or have in their head. But one thing I've noticed is the thought processes that I'm going through in life, and the psychological things I struggle with. Oftentimes when I talk about them with other people, I find out that they're going through similar struggles and similar thoughts. So this week's topic is called Finding the Balance, and it's about my own personal journey of trying to find balance, and some advice to others about which way to go on their path. But most of all, I'm looking towards providing some inspiration. What I've realized in the beginning of this year, I did some note-taking and journaling. And, it's something you haven't done for a while. I highly recommend doing this. Like, just get out a blank piece of paper and draw a circle in the middle and say, this is me. And, from there you make little branch lines, and just think of all the aspects of your life that are things that are important to you. Like I thought about my career. I knew I was going through some career changes this year, so I kind of wrote down the main things I was thinking about this year. Like, one of the ways I've made money in the past leading up to now has been doing handyman and construction work. In the last few months, that type of work has slowed down a bit, partly because I'm reinvesting my own personal time into things I want to do in the future, more long term. But my point is, for the sake of this journaling exercise I'm describing for you, is you kind of just want to make a map. Some people call this a mind map. So when I did my mind map in the beginning of the year, what I saw is that I had all these goals and dreams and things I want to be doing with my time. And it was overwhelming to look at. I found myself looking at my own list of things I want to do. Like, how the hell are you going to do all that stuff, man? It's just a lot of it. A lot of plans always hinge on money. It's like, how are you gonna get a business started if you don't have any capital? How are you gonna open a school or a retreat center? Some of the things I would love to do without any money in this physical world. So then those things are hinged on other things. So on the mind map, I drew little lines for just, off the big bubbles. I drew other little lines. And so, you might have a different process of journaling and creating this map. But when I did that, what I realized is that, as I said, there was a lot of things that are competing, and it was overwhelming to look at. Oh, look, there's a train out there. Neat. This is all new territory for me. Just kind of going for a walk in this general direction. I was told I could walk through this gate So I'm gonna do that. I'm even be nice and close it behind me, because that's what kind of guy I am. This is my little audio recorder here. Sometimes I use this for walk and talk stuff. Sometimes when I'm making videos. It's a cool little way to record digitally. You know, a lot of people have told me they don't have time to create content. And, you know, there's always a way if there's a will. And, you know, what's been on my mind recently, like I said, when I looked at my mind map, I have so many things I want to do, but a lot of them I can't do because I don't have the funding. And in many ways, time and money are very much tied together in our modern world. I don't know anybody personally who has the luxury to just completely do what they want with their days. Almost everybody I know, come to think of it, has responsibilities, either pets, children, property, business that they're running, or, you know, things that tie them down in various ways to where they can't just say, oh, I'm going to become a content creator and teach natural law to the world, you know. And that's kind of like what we're all encouraging, those of us in the natural law community, to others as the route to bigger change in the world. And that's not an easy path, you know. I mean, how do you become, it's like starting a whole job that the job of being a teacher of natural law or a teacher of morality, or just even encouraging people in that direction, what I like to call the light direction, requires a massive amount of effort and personal willpower. We just have to keep getting up and pushing yourself to do something new every day, despite the resistance of, often it feels like no one cares, or there's very few eyes on the work we put out there, even though often, you know, like I've seen people in our community put incredible amount of work, hours and hours, into presentations and research to try to make a point. And then, you know, you look on YouTube or Odyssey or BitChute or whatever these platforms are, and you see, you know, be lucky, get 100 views or 200 views, you know. And then you see people talking about mixing lemonade punch with corn syrup, and they got 3 million views, and everybody loves it, you know. The truth is that the world we live in, people will, from my point of view, what I see, most average people will do anything, take any distraction to not look at the one thing that is the most, very most important thing that we should all be looking at as a priority. And that is our relationship with reality. And what I mean by our relationship with reality is consciousness. What is consciousness but the technology that reality has provided with us, that we have available to understand right and wrong? Right and wrong behavior is the way that gravity is to a tire. You know, man, I want to take this tire up that hill and roll it down. That'd be fun. Maybe we should do that. You know, but this, what we do in life affects reality. It affects other people. It affects those around us. I guess I'm not going to roll the tire down the hill because I got my hands full. But I would do that. Maybe we'll do it in a minute. But yeah, that's a good allegory, right? Gravity is, for a physical world thing like a tire, gravity means everything. If you're sitting on your side over there, you're not going anywhere, you know? But if the tire's sitting upright on top of that hill with a little bit of momentum or force, and it's going to be rolling, you know? So I think really that's the core of where I'm getting at with this talk I'm doing with you guys today, I've noticed a lot of people don't have that passion or fire inside of them, like I'm describing, that makes them want to do a whole bunch of things. Where, you know, you sit, maybe for some folks, I think they probably sit down to do a mind map or a journal and it's blank and they're just staring at it like, I don't know what to do. And their question would be, how do I find that passion? How do I find my personal purpose, right? And to me, one thing I've recognized, I thought a lot about willpower. I thought a lot about, where does willpower come from? For a while I did some posts on social media and asked a lot of people what they thought, and I gathered all the answers. And one of the best answers I came across is that willpower and passion come from pain. They come from different levels of suffering or pain or being uncomfortable. Here's an example. There's a woman that I don't know personally, but I've heard this. It doesn't really matter if it's true, but it's the point of the story. There was something in the, I'm going to say late 80s, somewhere in there, called MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And as I understand it, the whole story went that this woman whose son had died in a car accident from drunk driving was inspired to make a difference for other people's sons. You know, she was so devastated by losing her son that she dedicated herself to doing educational work and promotional work to get other young people like her son to understand the dangers of drinking and driving, and to aid in keeping that from happening to others. One of the favorite people I love to always talk about, Viktor Frankl, survived the Nazi concentration camps, went on to write a book, Man's Search for Meaning. So he went through the most horrific thing you could imagine, came out of it trying to help other people. So the pain that he went through, like the pain that the drunk driver's mother went through, gave them the inspiration and the passion to do something about it. And I will say personally, like, I'm not a super wealthy person. Like, I'm not telling you this is the key to success that I'm teaching right now, in terms of having one of these big fancy houses, you know, like we see up here on the hills, and having a truck, and, you know, exactly the business you want to run. Like, I'm not the guy yet to tell you exactly how to do all those things. Like, I'm struggling with finances myself. Last month, at one point, I was down to $40 to my name, and it was embarrassing. It was frustrating. That is my personal pain point in my life right now. I've dedicated so much time and energy to the great work and to doing my podcast that I've slacked off on physical world solving problems, you know? And so for a while here, I'm gonna have to just super dedicate myself to my career. And, you know, this is a side note for those of you who are listening to the podcast. If anyone wants to help support the podcast, either with your time in helping me get things done, or helping promote the show, or donations of any type, would be much appreciated. I've really realized I can't afford to do the podcast with the time it takes to realistically do it without getting any help from my viewers. So I'd like to have products for sale, and I'm working in that direction to help fund the show, because it's quite expensive to run a podcast, to be honest. It's not cheap. You know, there's monthly fees and yearly fees that add up. But I love doing it, you know, and I get passion out of it, and I'm not going to stop. Even if I have to do it on my shoestring budget, I'm going to work it out. And I'm not saying asking for help is a hard thing for me to do, but it's a good aspect of life that we all have to embrace. And I think the same is true if your problem, I actually want to get over there on that trail. I wonder how I get over there. If your problem maybe you have your finances in shape to the point where that's not the biggest stress in your life. Maybe what you need is to find your passion so you can feel joy and you can feel satisfied, like you're living a life that is one of purpose, that makes you feel good about who you are. See, I feel those things. That is not my stress. I know that the work I do helps people, because I've had people reach out to me multiple occasions. In fact, I'm doing an interview today with someone who's, been watching the show and says it's brought them, they've appreciated it. And I've had, it doesn't have to be millions. Just knowing that there's people that really appreciate this work drives me, And even if I didn't get any of those responses, I know that the work I'm putting out into the world is me showing myself and my maker, God, the great all, whatever you want to call it, its intention into the world, saying, I want to leave this place better than when I came. I want to do something about the problems in this world. I don't like people being stolen from in all over the world. I don't like people being fooled. I don't like seeing people get taken advantage of. My studies have come to help me realize that one of the worst problems going on in the world is human trafficking and child trafficking, child sex trafficking. These type of things are rampant in our world right now, and they're hidden, they're occulted, because the people that, are the most wealthy people in the world have ways of keeping themselves sort of occluded and hidden from the rest of the population because they got the money to do so. And, even though we have a lot of good researchers out there and a lot of good books, it's not going to be easy to get at these folks. They're generationally sort of entrenched into places of power, and they've had plenty of time to build up their resources and build up their power structures to where the average folks, don't even know who these people are. We know about the Rothschilds, and we know about the Rockefellers, and we know about some of these other families that are connected to them. We can look at a lot of their terrible deeds, but we really don't have, the average person like you and I don't have access to affect those people directly, to stop their villainous ways. Our bridge towards doing something about that scenario is one of education, because the biggest problem is that we got, look around any city, any town, massive people, all these houses, and I look around like the way I'm looking around now in the Bay Area. It's like every hillside is full of houses. You look on any freeway and it's just mash with cars. Where are all these people when it comes to talking about morality or talking about what's right and wrong? It's hard to recognize that we live in a world that's so materialistic, that's so selfish, that people can barely look over their nose to recognize one of the biggest problems humans have ever had in history is slavery. And that slavery that has happened all through history still exists now, and it might be worse than it's ever been. In fact, it's likely that it's worse. But because most of us, at least here in America, have this level of comfort, look I got shoes, I got warm socks, I'm not worried about food. Even when I was down to $40, I really wasn't that worried about food. I had stuff I could sell. I had ways to get food. That's not really the problem. We need money so we can support our lifestyle. Let's be honest. Let's admit it. People want to be able to sit in front of a TV, a big ass TV, watch whatever they want. They want to be able to go to the store and get any kind of food, or just go out, and whether it's Chinese or Indian food, or we have a pretty high standard of living that hasn't existed through most of history, and we've become accustomed to it. We're addicted to a pretty comfortable lifestyle. So to reach a place of passion, to reach a place of purpose, to get that feeling in your life of joy to the point where there's tears in your eyes and you want to cry with happiness, like, you can get there. I have got there many times in my life. I live in a state of working towards a better future. Some call me an idealist, some call me an optimist. I think that humans can make better decisions. I think we can go better places. I think that we have the ability to clean up this mess we've made in this world. And of course, it's not going to happen all at once. It's going to be a process, and it's going to take a certain level of sacrifice and difficulty. It's not going to be easy, you know? And so for me, on my personal struggle, I've had to deal with this financial problem, you know? I grew up in a poor neighborhood. My parents kind of had a poor mentality. They didn't have a good business sense. And over the years, when I was married, my ex-wife really wanted me to just hold down a county job or something that was safe, that would bring in steady income and provide insurance for the family, you know? And I went along with that all to a point. And then I got to the point in my life where I realized I was just letting myself be held, like almost like my head being held underwater in this wage slavery type jobs that did not fulfill my passions, did not make me feel like I was getting any closer to a life of meaning, a life of purpose. So I had to make a break, and it wasn't easy. You know, it happened in stages. I had no idea back then that I would wind up splitting up with my wife and having a divorce. That was so far from my mind, never been my intention. But, you know, through COVID, the way things came down with the rules and the regulations and my own understanding of my sovereign rights, I had to draw a line, you know. The pain, the passion for what's right was stronger than my need to stay in that situation. So, you know, I had to take some big steps in my life, some leaps of faith in terms of separating from the state and trying. Ever since I've been trying for the last 10, 15 years, you know, I've been looking for ways to get out of your traditional slave labor type jobs and to try to initiate my own business of some sort, try to find different ways to bring in money, try to work directly with people. I often say these days with handyman and carpentry work, I only work for people I like, you know? And, you know, being kind of exclusive like that, only working for people that I like, you know, has made it to where sometimes it's harder to find work. And there's been some periods of time where I let too much time go by without bringing in enough money, and then wound up cutting it too close, you know. But that's kind of where I wanted to bring that up, is synchronicity. Synchronicity is like this amazing pat on the back that the universe brings in times when I've gone through struggle, or times when I've allowed myself to be open to recognizing signs and looking for omens. Obviously that stuff can get out of control, but I'm telling you, like, if you go for a walk like the one I'm on now and you just look around and you get to thinking about these philosophy or things that matter to you, you'll start to notice interesting things happen. When you're really going down a road of thought or trying to work something out in your mind and you get to a question, you'll meet someone and start talking about something, or a bird will fly by, or the next time you'll open a book, you'll open it right to a quote that's right about what you were thinking about. The universe is watching you and communicating with you. And if you take that conversation seriously and recognize that your experience is an experience with God, you know, and I'm not talking about God from religions. I'm not talking about a guy. I'm not talking about someone in the sky. I'm not talking about a particular being or spirit. I'm talking about the reality that we live in, the universe we live in. Natural law itself is the underlying code in this matrix. All those ones and zeros, like in the matrix, the code, that code is natural law. It's that we do things in this world and there's consequences. And those things we do and those consequences are all tied into morality. They're all tied into receiving an outcome based on what was put in. So what that really comes down to for us in terms of finding our passion and finding our purpose and doing something of value with our time is really concentrating on what's the most important thing that I need to be working on. Is it most important for me to feel comfortable and have like a fancy new pair of shoes or buy a new truck or whatever? Or is it most important that I leave this life knowing that I did something valuable and of meaning? And do I want to live day to day with a feeling in my guts, kind of like knowing that I'm putting my time and energy into something that isn't just for me? It's not just a selfish endeavor. It's something I'm doing to help others. And if your life has an element of that, you're going to feel more joy. It's just, I've seen it over and over. Even poor neighborhoods. And here's a good example. Many years ago, I did a volunteer service where I traveled to a different state, and a lot of the other volunteers I was working with traveled to other countries. And then we got to meet up partway through the year after we'd been at our projects. And some people had gone to like really poor places in the world, and they see people like kids running around in their bare feet, 5-6-year-old kids helping carry rocks for a construction process or something, you know, working, little kids, people dirt poor, you know. And yet what the volunteers told me was that these people were way more happy than anyone they ever met in the States, because they had community. They danced together, they sang together, they shared food together, however little they had. They had this community aspect, and it's something that's really been lacking and fragmented in our modern society. And it's partly because of the selfishness and people all out there looking for comfort. Yeah, it's possible. You could have one of those big, huge houses with 6 rooms, and you could be living in the corner, just staying in the one room. And that's very possible in today's world. That through most of history, there was no way to seclude yourself to that point without being a survivalist in the woods, right? The modern society offers a way for people to be super fragmented, whether it's by culture, by race, or just by choice. You know, not wanting to be around other people. You can do that. You can live in your own bubble in the modern world. But the more people that make that choice, that get, oh, I just don't like people, and I'm just gonna do things on my own, you know. More people that take that attitude, that selfish attitude, are contributing to the world going in the direction it's going in. That's just letting, not being part of the solution is being part of the problem, is what it breaks down to. Why do we even have the ability to think about purpose and what matters in this life? You know, why does that question even come up? I would say because it's the most core and fundamental reason why we're actually here. You know, why else is this complex and convoluted reality with all of its details constantly forming and reforming around us? It's this opportunity for us to explore morality. It's God exploring inside of its own self, right? That's what we are. So this moment, this time in your life right now, that's it. This carpe diem. This is your opportunity to do something of value with your time. And I like to talk about value enough because one thing I've come to realize is that that's really where they got us fractionalized and beaten down and divided as people. Why people have trouble working together, why people have trouble with just relationships, emotional problems, is we're fixated on comfort, and most of us are not a very emotionally powerful people, like in terms of our own ability to be conscious of our own self. And it's easy to blame other people for our problems, especially if we don't communicate with those people. So I would say, for most of us, solving these problems, whether it's your finances, whether it's your place you are at spiritually or mentally, psychologically, that's holding you back from being a person who's excited about your purpose and sharing with people around you and trying to make things better and feeling that joy for being that, is usually the main obstacles are addictive behaviors and relationship problems, lack of emotional intelligence. The more people, one thing I've realized is the more people that I get out there and talk to and have experiences with and talk to, the more I understand where people are coming from. So like, people are the most valuable commodity, that we really have in this experience. And learning to communicate people, talk to people, and spend times with other human beings is something that we need to really work on in building our communities stronger. Often when you talk about anarchy, the average person who doesn't really understand the concept is just repelled by the idea because they see it as a lack of organization. Like, how are we gonna catch the bad guys kind of stuff, or how are we gonna defend ourselves against other bad guys in other parts of the world? All those problems get solved when we strengthen our communities. And that's like knowing people face to face. That's communicating with people. That's working through problems. And really, the balance of life is a huge percentage, is just that. So I would encourage you, to think about your relationships with people around you. How can you strengthen those relationships? If the people that you spend time with are people who, from your point of view, don't get it, or are shallow, or don't see the big picture, or don't understand natural law, or moral relativists, that's when speaking out and creating your own content and putting your heart and your passion in the same place opens all kinds of doors. I feel like I'm one of the richest people in the world in that I have massive amount of friends. Even right now, I'm up here visiting a friend, who's helping me in my career. And that connection was made from being active. I met this friend through autonomy, and that's something I've brought up in the podcast many times. I've met friends through the Mark Passio community and the One Great Work Network. Every time I make a podcast, every time I make a show, there's an opportunity for people to reach out to me, to send me an email, and or contact on social media. And I've made countless friends. And if you're having trouble meeting other people that are on the same vibration you are, or that care about freedom and natural law, then you need to get yourself out there on those platforms so people can find you, and that you can commune and communicate with people of like minds. Most times, the only reason we're being held back from achieving our goals is our own mindset problems. A lot of us talk to ourselves constantly in a negative way, like, I'm not good enough, or catch yourself saying, oh, I'm sorry for everything you do. I could have done that better, So like, building confidence, it really helps to have good friends, number one, to talk to, who help reflect back to you like, no, you're cool, you're doing great. And, to get those good friends, you got to have a level of believing in yourself. And to believe in yourself, I would say really, like, one of the biggest things is go back in time and history down the trail of your life and find the places where you broke up with people, where you screwed up with people. Try to make those things right as best as possible. Try to make righteous decisions. Try to work in a direction that aligns with your principles. For me, that was getting out of working for the government, and then it was getting out of a slave wage type job, and replacing that with other types of things I could do little by little. I'm still in that process. But number one, first and foremost, was working into my life a regular system of creating content, a regular system of producing that content and publishing that content. And that takes a lot of effort and time, but it also gives me a lot of pride and self-confidence in that I know now I can look back and I have years of presentations and recordings and interviews of people I could talk to and reach out to. And so you build these things up little by little by making it part of your life, by making it an exercise. No one said it would be easy, but nothing easy really gives that same level of pride and joy either. So finding the balance is doing the self-work, and it's really learning how to get along with other human beings. And then once we integrate our philosophy and start making choices in real time in the real world to align those philosophy with what we do, you know, the more we can do those things, the better we're going to feel about ourselves. You know, I think some of the things that I see people arguing about online, you know, are you ready to stop paying taxes? Are you ready to stop having a driver license or have a license on your car? Or, you know, are you going to go out there and talk to people about these things? Like, there's different levels of how we can change the world. And no one has an expectation that you're going to do all of them right away. And I don't really recommend like some of the ones that will get you put in prison. You know what I mean? Like, if you can just get yourself to where your job is not like money directly going to the government, or put yourself in a place where you can regularly do content about morality and teach people what's right in some way or another, or work on the self-work, just putting your energy in a light direction is huge, you know? And maybe some of those other more, you know, political things, like how you deal with your money and taxes and all that, maybe you can work on that little by little. You know, you got to do the steps and the things you can do right in front of you that are practical, and have a plan, you know, and then put together a strategy of how to deal with the next thing. As long as you're taking steps in the right direction, you're gonna feel good about yourself. And if you start forming a community of people around you that are doing similar things, they'll inspire you to do that even more. And so, you know, I hope that this talk has given you some inspiration and will to move in the right direction. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining the podcast. Thanks for joining me on my walk. And I'll see you guys next week. Much love. I think I'll play some other one or two little videos I made recently that are just fun, and see how they hit you. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. So this story is for folks going through some sort of time of loss. I lost everything I owned in a fire. A friend of mine and I were driving across the country in an old Volkswagen bus, and it burned right near the border of California. We were hoping to limp it home, but it didn't make it. It caught on fire, and I wound up left with only my dog, luckily, which survived. I was able to get my dog out of the fire, small dog, and a pair of pants and a shirt. And I didn't even have shoes. And, you know, when you lose things, it seems terrible. But now it's always been a pretty incredible thing to have that story that I can tell in my life, the time when I had nothing, right? And I can empathize when people are going through times of loss. And I use that to remind myself that things can be worse along the way. And I'm reminded of the story of Job, if anybody's familiar with biblical reference. The story of Job goes, God, this is like one of his best guys, this guy Job, but there's a Satan character that wants to challenge God, and they strike some sort of deal, and God says, okay, have at him. And so Job is hit with every imaginable terrible thing, losing his loved one and his family and his clothes and his food, and gets down to nothing, and he never loses his faith. He becomes this story of willpower, having inner strength, stoicism. It's like post Socrates. There was this Hellenistic period where there were these philosophers that kind of go down in history as the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, but the Zeno was the original kind of supposed father of Stoicism, or so he's called. And this guy apparently shipwrecked and came crashing into the land and was left with nothing. And this is where he developed this Stoic mentality that just because he lost everything, he had his life. And this was the most wonderful thing of all. In times of loss, these are also wonderful moments in life where we have the ability to surmount a hero's journey, to be grateful for life and the ability to solve problems. Because what else is life but going to bring us one thing or another, right? It's just a matter of time before something goes wrong. And then that's our opportunity, like as the Stoics would say, to show our fortitude, to show our moral virtue. So when things get tough in times of loss, it's actually the greatest opportunities of life. And one other way I've thought about this is you may or may not be a climber, but you can imagine if you were a mountain climber. The whole game of climbing the mountain, there's a lot to it. Endurance, strength, practice, right? But you can imagine on the day when you're doing the mountain climb, there's that moment where you're going through the most difficult part of the climb, and your body's the most sweaty and you're the most tired that you've been. And pushing through that moment and getting through the steepest part of the cliff as you climbed up the mountain winds up being the best part of the story, assuming you make it and don't fall off the cliff. But if it weren't for that moment and that trial, what would a mountain climber really have to be excited about at the top, other than surmounting that most difficult, sweaty, steep part of the trail and the trip or the climb? And that's what you're going through in life when you're experiencing great pain or loss or things get tough. And that is the most time in life where we can also get the most perspective and ability to surmount that obstacle. And so embrace it. Thanks for joining me. High five. I'd like to ask you a question. Would you like to live a life full of purpose? A life that brings you a great deal of passion? A life worth living? Would you like to improve the quality of your life and the clarity of your thoughts, and to feel like you understand your life's purpose? Well, I'm creating this video to possibly help you on your journey. And I can tell you a little bit about my journey and some thoughts that I've come across that may aid you in your journey and your process, and really to live the life that you want to live. For so many people in the modern age, in the modern time, that life I'm describing is equated with material things. It's equated with having things, having success in the financial world. And many people equate success and happiness with wealth in the physical world in terms of money. And I'm obviously not one of those people that think that the cure to sadness or depression is money. And I think that there's something much deeper and much more important that will add quality, clarity, purpose, and passion to your life. The more that you come to certain recognitions and realizations. The thing about realizations, it's funny that realization starts with the word real, is that it's only real for the person doing the realizing, real eyes, right? If you use your real eyes from the inside, sometimes you see things and understand things in a way that you didn't before. And that's a really important thing, because before I came to certain realizations, those things were foreign to me, and I wouldn't have understood them until that point when the realization hit. For me, one of those big ones in life happened when I was about 13 years old. I was exposed to a book by my father. He was a preacher in the Christian faith, and he showed me this book by a guy named Brother Lawrence, and it was called Practicing the Presence. Let's see the exact title: Practicing the Practice of the Presence of God. Now, for those of you out there that are non-religious or even question the existence of God, I understand this. There are a lot of aspects of religion, many religions, that throw things into confusion by different varying storylines. But what I'd like to point to is not so much the religious aspect or the dogmatic aspect of these things, but the core truths that exist in all philosophy and all religions, all of nature, and all of people, and all of everything. There exists a certain commonality. Now, the book I'm describing, Brother Lawrence, he was in a war. He found himself in a bleak, open area, and there was just one tree standing out in the middle of this empty area, and it was had no leaves on it. And as he gazed at this tree, he had a realization. He came to this experience, right? What lasted the rest of his life, the way he describes in the book. And the realization or the experience was just that this tree, even though it looked bleak and it didn't have any leaves, it had the promise of bringing new life and sprouting buds and leaves and going back to its fullness. And to him, deep down, this symbolized that God would always bring new life. And, even if you're a person that doesn't like to think of the term God, I would challenge you to consider the sun. Every day we wake up and the sun comes out. Even if it's cloudy, even if it's raining, we know that the sun will come out again. And another thing that occurs to me is the ground. This is a very common thing that we take for granted, but it's always there. Even if you're on a plane, it's just a matter of time till you get back to the ground. You're never going to stay away from it forever. There are commonalities in this existence that we live in that we can ponder on and make realizations about that will greatly aid our process, as I described in the beginning, of understanding our purpose. Why are we here? What is the point of it all? Especially for those who go through high levels of suffering, sadness, and depression, it can really make one question, like, why do I have to go through all this, right? Why does it have to be so difficult? Why is there so much struggle? And so the gift I would like to share with you is right behind me on the wall, the tree of life. But I wanted to talk about it today more in terms of the biblical story of the tree of good and evil. In the book I was describing, Brother Lawrence, he describes practicing the presence. And when I was 13 years old, I was really struck by this. And I used to sort of imagine, if you will, that I was having this ongoing conversation at all times with God, the great all, the creator, inside of my head. The native people might call it Mother Earth, or the great mother, the great provider, right? The great intelligence, if you were in the Freemason tradition, the great architect, right? I was imagining myself sort of having this ongoing communication that Brother Lawrence was describing. And I'd have these amazing recognitions and realizations. And part of the trick of this is, we all know that we have imagination, and we all know there's been plenty of crazy, mad people in the world in different times who have led people astray, said that they have the word of God, and then it turns out that they lead people into some terrible things. So there has to always be this question: is this voice or this thoughts I'm having in my head just my imagination, or am I really communicating with the great all? And my recognition when I was 13 was that if I were silent and if I were honest, 100% honest with myself, and I would just wait, as I was having these thought processes, part of me deep down would know the right answer. And it would take a little bit of humility and a little bit of patience to get past some of that monkey mind, wild ideas, and my own personal thoughts on the thing. But if I were to wait, and I figured out eventually for me that I have like a period of 1 to 3 days. If I have a question on my mind and something I'm pondering, just let it sit there for a full day, up to 3 days. And within that time, I would notice out in the world, or sometimes even on a TV show or a book or something someone would say, there would be some sort of synchronicity. And inside that synchronicity, I would find a realization, a recognition of some wonderful truth. And I've come to recognize that in life, there are always answers, and they're not always the ones we want to hear. And if we let our mind be clouded by what we want, it's almost like putting a filter on your camera and seeing the world through a filter. That's what we want to see. And it's a difficult process to learn to remove that filter. And the patience is the tool that I find works best to do that. But I wanted to encourage you to practice this idea of practicing the presence and asking questions to deep within. There's something that I like to call our divine crystal. And this is our connection to the great all. The tree represents our ability to discern the difference between right and wrong. And I think that the heart of the story of, Adam and Eve eating from this tree of life and discovering this ability to understand the difference between right and wrong is symbolic to help us understand that this is the key aspect of all life. Apple's a symbol, much like a tree, that has, the roots coming from the ground and the branches coming from the top. It's the same symmetrically. Like if you were to cut an apple in half in either direction, you get the same symmetrical shape. And I think of this toroidal shape of the universe and all of reality constantly flowing up and down the core of the apple and then out around the apple and creating this vibration that's the reality we live in. And if you imagine that all of reality in this creation is the great all, and it's just pumping with electrical energy waves and vibrations. And here we are, one little slice, one little plane of reality where we're experiencing what is all interconnected and all woven together. There's really no separation. But because we're living this linear lifestyle, it's a special opportunity to kind of feel a certain separateness. I described this in some of my other videos about the whole in the universe and everything and nothing, and sort of a weird paradox conundrum that we run into, of feeling separate from the all, but we are the all. So if you're feeling challenged in life and you're facing adversity, facing difficulties, that's great. That is your opportunity to find a quiet space and to look within. Not because I'm saying so, but because you have the ability to do so. And the more humans that work on this and experience this process of realization and recognition of the great all, the more that we as humans can move away from some of the evils that are currently being experienced on this planet and more towards the good that we want for our future of all. And the hardest aspect of this is to recognize, even though I am super important in my own experience, the great all everything, the interconnectedness, is sort of like the bigger, all-encompassing reality that we're in. And it's alive. It's alive, and it's watching you just like you're watching it. And so to find my purpose and the next thing to do in life, or get past the next obstacle, the answers will always be within. And I encourage you to seek that clarity. And it's something that has brought me so much joy in life and passion. And I feel like I do have a great understanding of my purpose. Don't always feel like I've got enough money in my bank account, but that's not really what drives happiness, is it? Well, folks, if anyone wants to discuss this more with me, I make myself available for certain consultation meetings. The first consultation meeting is free. You can go to chrisjantzen.com. That's JANTZEN, chrisjantzen.com, and book an appointment with me. And perhaps I can help listen to you and let you gain your own clarity through telling me your story and describing what's holding you up. Or find someone you trust, a good friend, and speak your mind with that person. Ask them to listen, and it's amazing what you will find. This can also be done in journaling, and it can be done walking alone in nature, or doing a myriad of things. The important part is the intention, and recognizing that this tree of life, this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is the defining characteristic of reality. And it's what holds reality together, is that it's all interconnected, and it's all about what we do with our choices and how we interact with the great intelligence, the great living being of all that we are connected to and cannot be truly ever disconnected from. All right, folks, I hope that brought you some inspiration, and I'll look forward to talking to you soon. Much love. High five.